While not germane to the study of the SICHAH, I would like to digress for a moment and present the overall context to the pasuk used by the Gemara as the basis within Torah for the validation of a land transaction through the payment of money. Yerushalayim is under siege from Nebuchadnezzar. Yirmiyahu has been thrown into prison by Tzedakah, who was rather upset with the prophecies of Yirmiyahu that Yerushalayim would be conquered by the Babylonians. While in prison, Yirmiyahu receives a vision that was more symbolic than practical. In this vision, he is informed that his uncle would come to him and request that he buys a particular piece of property. The uncle shows up in prison, makes the request, and in doing so validates the vision as coming from God. While in prison, he draws up two documents attesting to the sale. The first was signed, sealed, stamped, while the second document remained unsealed and entrusted to Baruch ben Neriah for safekeeping. In handing the unsealed document to Baruch ben Neriah, Yirmiyahu makes a prophecy in the name of God that despite the fact that the city of Yerushalayim was about to be overrun by the forces of Nebuchadnezzar, he foretells of a future in which there will again be trading in the houses and fields and vineyards of the land, and therefore there would also be once again a need for identification of land ownership, hence the need to document the transaction. After all the parties had left, Yirmiyahu addresses HaKadosh Baruch Hu in prayer. He mentions God's omnipotence, God's close relationship between himself and Bnei Israel. He even understands the need for God to destroy Yerushalayim on account of the actions of Bnei Israel in adopting Avodah Zarah practices. What he did not understand was the need, in light of the imminent destruction of the city, to purchase this piece of property. In Pasuk 25, you have said to me, give the money to get yourself the property. And this land transfer had to be documented and witnessed, despite the fact that you have already decreed that the city of Yerushalayim was to be handed over to the Chaldeans under the control of Nebuchadnezzar. God's response to the question posed by Yirmiyahu is to once again present a lengthy justification for the destruction of Yerushalayim. We have here some very harsh words uttered by God in his indictment of Bnei Israel, but then he ends off with a response to Yirmiyahu's question as to the purpose of purchasing the land on the eve of the destruction of the city. First, God promises that there will be a return to the land. He also promises that there will be a reconnection between God and Bnei Israel. He promises the removal of the Yetzer Hara. There will no longer be a desire to dabble in Avodah Zarah practices. And finally, the symbolism behind the purchase of the property by Yirmiyahu, a promise for an economic revival. Despite the fact that you have prophesied that the land will be laid waste by the Chaldeans, men will in the future get their fields for money, they'll put their businesses in writing, they'll be stamping papers and having them witnessed, for I will let their fate be changed. Ne'um Hashem. It is Pasuk 44, Sadot Bakesef Yiknu, that the Gemara uses to underpin the validity of money in completing the transfer of land from one individual to another, along with the Tosfot's challenge as to why we needed to refer to a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, Nevi'im, when we could have gone directly to a pasuk in Bereshit, the purchase of the Machpelah from Ephron, where we also see a reference to the payment of money for the purchase of the field.